Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A decorated veteran retreats to his mountain sanctuary only to find it hijacked by a corrupt HOA throwing a wild party in his own home. What begins as trespassing unravels into a ruthless land theft conspiracy, but they picked the wrong man to cross. I was elbow deep in the transmission of a 68th Mustang when I got the envelope. It came in one of those self-important ivory-colored security envelopes with the words "Urgent HO Notice" in bold red print across the top. My shop manager, Kyle, tossed it onto my workbench like it was a coupon flyer. "Another one of those HOA weirdos again?" he asked, chewing a protein bar like he was a dog gnawing on rawhide. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked it up, not recognizing the sender, Silver Pines Homeowners Association. That caught my attention. I hadn't set foot on the property in nearly 8 months. Business had been booming. 4 major restorations back to back, and a custom order from a collector in Colorado that turned into a full-blown rebuild. But I'd kept the utilities paid, hired Walter, my neighbor and a Vietnam vet, to keep an eye on the place, and made sure the land stayed clear of debris or wild growth. That little mountain cabin was my sanctuary, my reward. 20 acres of pine-covered heaven 3 miles off the grid, and most importantly, completely outside any HOA jurisdiction. I ripped the letter open. It was a bill, $6,200 for unauthorized use of community utilities and systematic violations of parking regulations. What community? What utilities? I didn't share a septic line, a water hookup, or a damn sidewalk with Silver Pines. I owned the road leading to my property. I'd triple-check that with the county records before I signed the purchase deed. I picked up my phone and called the number on the letter. "Silver Pines, HOA, this is Patricia," came a sweet, rehearsed voice, smiling venom. "Patricia, this is Connor Reese. I just got your letter about the fines. There's a mistake. I'm not a member of your HOA." A pause. Then she said, "Oh, Mr. Reese, so glad you called. I was actually hoping you would. See, technically, your property is adjacent to Silver Pines, but many of our residents have voiced concerns about your parcel's appearance. And given the increased use of nearby roads, we believe it's only fair to share costs." Not interested, and not paying a damn cent. I don't use your roads. I don't use your services. My cabin is on its own well and solar. You're barking up the wrong tree. "Mr. Reese," she said, voice syrupy but tight underneath. "I think it would be in everyone's best interest, especially yours, to consider selling that parcel. Perhaps we could help facilitate—" "Not for sale," I said flatly. "Don't call again." Then I hung up. I stared at the letter for another moment, then dropped it into the shop's burn barrel and lit it up with a torch. Felt better than it should have. 3 days later, I got a second envelope. Certified mail. An official warning that my abandoned structure was under review by the county fire inspector and may be subject to emergency condemnation for public safety. This time, I didn't burn the letter. This time, I called Shane. He picked up on the second ring. "Reese, been too long. You up for a trip to the mountains? You bringing beer and rifles?" "Then hell yes." I called Rico next. He was still working private security contracts, said he could take off the weekend. Then Deke. Still training MMA hopefuls in Missoula, still built like a pissed-off bear. All of them were in. This Friday. 2 trucks, 4 veterans, and 20 acres of pine-blanketed peace to reclaim. Last person I called was Walter. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I frowned. Walter wasn't the type to miss a call, especially from me. I left a message. "Hey Walt, it's Connor, heading up Friday. Hope you're all right. Let me know if you need anything. No callback, no text." That didn't sit right. On Thursday, I shut down the shop, handed Kyle the keys, and packed the Tacoma with essentials, weapons, tools, a cooler full of steaks, and a bottle of whiskey for night 2. We hit the road early Friday morning. Deke drove his own truck with Rico riding shotgun. Shane rode with me. I kept trying Walter's number on the way up. Still no answer. "Maybe he's up with the goats," Shane offered, "or just forgot his charger." "Yeah, maybe." But my gut was already coiling. I'd learned to trust that feeling. Iraq taught us that. So did Fallujah. When we passed the old wooden sign for Silver Pines, I slowed down. Pristine little community. Cookie-cutter homes. Manicured lawns. And that kind of creeping silence you only find in places with rules about curtain colors. Rico gave it a glance. "Looks like the Stepford wives live here." "No shit. Deke said over the radio. "Keep your heads on a swivel. HOA types don't play fair." The sun was dipping low behind the trees as we hit the last half-mile of my private road, and then, from a distance, I saw something that made my stomach sink. Lights. Dozens of them. Flashing, colorful party lights. The hum of bass thudded through the woods, faint but undeniable. Shane squinted ahead. "That can't be your place, right?" I didn't answer, because I already knew the truth. By the time we cleared the last bend in the road, the music was no longer distant. It was loud, professionally loud, the kind of bass that doesn't belong anywhere near pine trees and wildlife. The road leading to my clearing was clogged with cars, sedans, luxury SUVs, even a stretch limo that had no business surviving the gravel. They were parked carelessly along both sides, tires chewing up the edges of my land like it belonged to no one. I pulled the truck to a stop. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Deke muttered into the radio, "Tell me that's not your cabin." I stepped out of the truck, and the smell hit me immediately. Alcohol, grilled meat, perfume, gasoline from a catering truck idling near the tree line. Colored lights flashed through the branches, casting the woods in neon pulses like a bad nightclub dropped into the wilderness. It was my cabin, my place. Floodlights illuminated the clearing. A massive white inflatable tent sat where I used to set up targets for range practice. At least 40 cars were visible at a glance, maybe more hidden deeper along the road. A catering van was backed right up to my porch. 2 portable bars had been set up on my deck with bartenders in matching black vests pouring drinks like they were at a resort. And hanging above my front door, secured with bright silver zip ties, was a banner stretched from beam to beam. "Happy 25th birthday, Megan, Queen of Silver Pines." I felt something go very quiet inside my head. Shane let out a low whistle. "That's bold." Rico scanned the crowd, already switching into professional mode. At least 70 people. Security present. This isn't some kid's party. "Yeah," Deke said as he stepped out beside me, cracking his neck. "This is a hostile occupation." People noticed us then. The crowd parted slightly as 4 men in worn jackets, boots, and expressions that didn't match the vibe walked toward the house with purpose. Laughter died down around us. A few drunk guests stared like we were part of the entertainment. One guy yelled, "Hey, private event!" Another laughed and added, "You're late, bros." I didn't slow down. 2 young men in black shirts with security printed across the chest stepped into my path near the porch. One of them held up a hand. "Sir, invitation only." "This is my house," I said calmly. He smirked. "Sure it is." Then he put his hand on my shoulder. That was his mistake. I pivoted, trapped his wrist, and dropped my weight. His knees buckled before he even understood what happened. I twisted once, controlled, precise, and he went down on his back, gasping, arm pinned in a lock that made the joint scream. The second guard froze. "Let him go, man," he said quickly, hands already halfway up. "I will," I replied. "When everyone leaves." I released the first guy, who scrambled away, clutching his arm, and stepped onto my porch. Inside was worse. They had pushed my furniture against the walls and covered it with cheap white sheets like it was a crime scene. Rental tables filled the living room. Someone had climbed onto my dining table and was dancing with a drink, sloshing dangerously close to the edge. My stone fireplace, the one I built myself, had been turned into some kind of shrine with candles and flower arrangements. I walked straight to the electrical panel and flipped the main breaker. The music died instantly. Lights snapped off. The house fell into stunned silence. A second later, the shouting started. "What the hell? Hey! Who did that?" I turned on my phone flashlight and raised my voice. "Everyone listen carefully," I said. "I am the owner of this property. You are trespassing. You have 5 minutes to get out of my house and off my land. Anyone still here after that will be dealing with the police and me." A woman pushed through the crowd toward me, heels clicking angrily against my floor. Patricia Hargrove. I recognized her immediately from the smug tone alone. She wore a deep red dress and the look of someone who had never been told no without consequences. Behind her trailed a blonde girl wearing a glittering tiara, Megan, and a broad-shouldered man with a builder's posture and a permanent scowl. "What is this circus?" Patricia snapped. "Who are you supposed to be?" "Owning the house helps," I replied. "Connor Reese, and you, Patricia, just committed criminal trespass." Her eyes flickered for half a second. just long enough. Then she smiled. "Oh, Mr. Reese, what a surprise. We assumed this place was abandoned. It's been empty for nearly a year. That doesn't make it yours." Her husband stepped forward. "Look, buddy, there are important people here. Judges, council members. It's my daughter's birthday. Let's not make a scene. We'll pay you for the rental." "I don't rent my home," I said. "And you're out of time." Behind me, Shane quietly started recording. Rico angled his camera toward the cars outside. Deke stood on the porch like a statue carved from bad intentions. Megan stamped her foot. "Mom, do something. He's ruining my birthday." Patricia pulled out her phone, fingers shaking now. "I'm calling Constable Harvey. He'll deal with this." "Please do," I said. "Make sure he brings a pen. There's a lot to write up." The countdown had already started. Rory Hargrove didn't like being told no. You could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the twitch in his temple, the half step forward like he was gearing up to make something physical out of this. I saw that posture 100 times in the Corps, guys who thought size made them invincible. He had 50 pounds on me, easy. But only the kind of weight you get from sitting in trucks and yelling at subcontractors. "I'm going to count to 3, Rory said, stabbing a finger in my direction. "You either back off or I put you on the ground." "You really want to try that here?" I asked him. He took another step, swung. I pivoted left, grabbed his wrist mid-swing, and drove my elbow into his jaw with a tight snap. He hit the floor hard, a dead fall, loud enough that every drunk dancing idiot stopped mid-sentence. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the shrieking started. 3 of Megan's goons, late 20s, overconfident, overdressed, decided this was their action movie moment. They surged toward me, shouting something about respect and lawsuits. I didn't have to lift a finger. Deke intercepted the first one with a liver shot that folded him in half. Rico caught the second with a leg sweep so clean it would have made a judo instructor proud. The third managed to get an arm on Shane before he was pinned against the wall like a bug under glass. Me? I blocked a wild haymaker from a fourth-party crasher and replied with a clean right hook to the nose. He dropped like a sack of bricks. And just like that, the music had been replaced by chaos. Screams, glass shattering. Someone knocked over a drink station. People tripped over folding chairs and each other. The girl who had been dancing on my table earlier sobbed hysterically as she crawled toward the door. A punch bowl clattered to the ground and exploded in sticky pink fragments. Patricia shrieked into her phone. "Harvey, we're under attack." "Get up here, now. Bring everyone." Megan was crying now, full-blown mascara-running meltdown, as she knelt over Rory's twitching body. "Daddy, get up." "Oh my God. Mom, make them stop." But there was nothing more to stop. In under 30 seconds, it was over. Rory was breathing, blinking slowly, holding his jaw like it might fall off. One of the security guards was curled up against a planter box, cradling his ribs. The 3 young guys were groaning on the floor, none seriously hurt, but all thoroughly humiliated. Shane glanced at his phone. "Got it all." I turned back to the crowd, what was left of it anyway. 3 minutes, I repeated. "If you're still on my land after that, you're trespassing. Period." The exodus was biblical. People scrambled over each other, grabbing purses and coolers and half-empty champagne flutes. The DJ packed up faster than a man dodging sniper fire. The catering staff didn't even try to collect equipment. They just jumped into their van and peeled out, headlights bouncing down the dirt road. The banner over my door ripped in half as someone tried to yank it down and ran off with it still wrapped around their arm. Deke leaned against the porch rail, arms crossed. Hell of a party. Rico shrugged. Kinda light on cake. Megan, still sobbing, tried to guilt me. "You ruined everything. This was supposed to be perfect." I looked down at her. "You and your family broke into my home, trashed my property, and used it like your own resort. You don't get to play the victim," she hiccuped. "But my birthday was over when the lights went out." Shane opened the front door. "Driveway's clearing fast. Cops'll be here soon." Patricia stood beside Rory, who was now sitting upright, groaning softly, face bruised and swelling. "You'll regret this," she said. "No," I replied. "You will." And I meant it. The last taillights disappeared down the road just as I heard the crunch of fresh tires on gravel. Headlights swept across the clearing, illuminating the wreckage of the party. Knocked over tables, trampled grass, streamers caught in pine branches like synthetic cobwebs. A squad car rolled up, its roof lights spinning lazily, not even bothering with a siren. Another vehicle followed, a county-issued SUV, older, beat up, with a dented front bumper that told me everything I needed to know. Constable Harvey climbed out of the SUV like he owned the mountain, mid-50s, red-faced, beer gut straining under his belt. He had the permanent squint of a man who thought everyone owed him an explanation. His deputy, kid no older than 24, got out the other side, already looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Harvey didn't bother looking at me at first. He marched toward Patricia and Rory, who was now propped up on a lawn chair someone had dragged from the deck. Megan was pacing in small, frantic circles nearby, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Jesus, what the hell happened here?" Harvey barked. Patricia was on him instantly. "Harvey, thank God. These men, they attacked us. They broke in during my daughter's birthday and assaulted my husband." She gestured at Rory dramatically. "Look at him." Rory attempted a weak groan for emphasis, still holding a pack of rapidly melting ice against his jaw. Harvey turned to me. Finally, "And you are?" he asked, like I was the one who needed introducing. I stepped forward and pulled a folder from my jacket. Inside were copies of my deed, utility records, tax statements, and a printed map of the property lines with the county seal. "Connor Reese," I said calmly, "owner of this property. These people broke into my home, threw a party without my knowledge or permission, and caused damage. When I arrived and asked them to leave, Mr. Hargrove tried to assault me. The rest was self-defense. I have it all on video." Harvey blinked. He looked down at the papers, then back at Patricia. "Wait, this is his place?" Patricia's expression faltered just for a second. "Well, technically, yes. But it's been unoccupied for nearly a year. You assumed you could break in and throw a party?" Harvey snapped, clearly unprepared for how public this just became. "Harvey," she hissed, leaning in close. "Let's talk over here." He narrowed his eyes but followed her a few paces away. I watched them argue in hushed tones for nearly a minute. Patricia's hands flew with frustration. Harvey glanced at me twice, then at my friends, still standing silently behind me like a wall of reckoning. Whatever deal she was trying to spin, it wasn't landing. Finally, Harvey turned back toward me and let out a long sigh. "All right, Mr. Reese. Do you want to press charges?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Trespassing, vandalism, attempted assault, and I'd like a full report on the damages documented." He nodded. "Understood." Patricia stepped forward, voice shrill. "This is insane. You're really taking his side over mine." "He owns the damn place, Patty," Harvey barked. "And from what I can see, you and your family just walked in like you had a lease. He attacked my husband. He has it on video, and your husband's the one who swung first. I'm not risking my badge on this." That stunned her. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Rico handed Harvey a flash drive. "Footage is all here. Every minute." Harvey took it, looked it over like it might bite him, then pocketed it. "I'll file the preliminary report tonight. Might take a few days to process the rest. You want to press criminal charges, you'll need to file an affidavit with the county clerk." "I will," I said. "First thing Monday." Harvey scribbled in a notepad, then motioned to his deputy to start photographing the scene. Rory groaned again, louder this time, trying to elicit sympathy. "You want an ambulance?" Harvey asked, not sounding particularly concerned. "I'll take him," Patricia said quickly. "He just needs ice and rest. We'll leave." Harvey gave her a long look. "You should." Megan tried one last tantrum. "This is so unfair. He ruined everything. I hate him." "You trespassed," I said flatly. "And someone's going to be paying for the broken windows and the missing firearms." That shut her up. Patricia finally turned to go, dragging Megan along, Rory limping behind like a wounded bear. Their SUV reversed over its own tire tracks, fishtailed slightly in the dirt, and vanished into the trees. The clearing felt heavier after they left. Quiet. Like the woods were trying to exhale. Harvey remained behind as his deputy snapped photos and made notes. I showed them the busted window in the rear, the dented safe, the torn cabinet doors. "No signs of forced entry on the main door?" the deputy asked. "No," I said. "So either they picked the lock or someone had a key." Harvey scratched his neck. "Could have come through the back." "Pretty common trick with these vacation homes." I nodded, but I was already thinking about Walter. He had a spare key. He'd check on the place every other week. It wasn't like him to just disappear. I told Harvey about him. Name, age, service record, address. He nodded and jotted it all down. "I'll run a welfare check," he said. "Appreciate that." They left shortly after midnight. The four of us remained behind, walking through the wreckage in silence. My couch reeked of champagne. A slice of cake was mashed into my favorite Navajo pattern rug. The upstairs bathroom sink was cracked, and someone had snapped off the handle of the shower. God knows what they did to my mattress. We gathered what we could salvage and dumped the rest. The fire pit came back to life. Deke roasted hot dogs on a bent wire hanger. Rico poured whiskey into tin mugs. Shane started drafting an email to his brother, who worked in insurance claims. We didn't talk much, but I knew we were all thinking the same thing. This wasn't just trespassing. This was targeted, calculated, and Walter still hadn't called back. Something was off. Way off. I couldn't sleep that night. Not just because my house felt violated, though it did, but because I couldn't stop thinking about Walter. He would have never let this happen. And if something had happened to him... No, I didn't like that thought. By 6 in the morning, I was already packed and rolling. Deke rode shotgun. Rico and Shane stayed behind to document everything, photograph damage, and secure the place. We took my second truck, the older Ford, loaded with a toolbox, jacks, and a shotgun behind the seat. I wasn't taking chances anymore. Walter's place was 5 miles away, down an old gravel route that cut through forest and a patch of farmland. The morning was cold and wet, frost still clinging to the edges of barbed wire fences. Birds scattered as we drove past the final bend. Then I saw the house, and my stomach turned. The windows were boarded. The grass was overgrown. His truck was gone. On the door, nailed crooked like a slap in the face, was a county notice printed on harsh yellow paper. Property seized for tax non-compliance. Auction pending. Dated 3 weeks ago. I killed the engine and got out slowly. No way he didn't tell you about this, Deke muttered. He didn't. He wouldn't have just left, I said. Not without calling. We circled the house. The barn was locked with a rusted chain. The garden looked like it hadn't been touched in a month, and his chickens were gone. Not dead. Just gone. Coop open, feed barrels empty. I knocked on the door anyway, out of some dumb hope. Nothing. I called his cell again, straight to voicemail. Then I tried his son, Steven, a number Walter had given me over coffee one winter when we were fixing his tractor alternator. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice picked up. Hello? Steven, this is Connor Reese. I'm a friend of your dad's. From Montana. A pause. Then his voice snapped awake. Mr. Reese, my God, I've been trying to figure out how to contact you. That hit me like a brick. Why? Steven exhaled. My dad's in a hospital in California. Heart attack. He's stable now, but it was close. He collapsed the day after the county posted some notice about overdue taxes. Said he owed over $34,000 out of nowhere. I clenched the phone tighter. That's impossible. He was always up to date. I know that for a fact. That's what he said. Said the numbers were wrong, completely off. Tried to contest it, but they gave him 48 hours to vacate. He called me panicking, so I flew in and brought him here. Did he ever get to fight it? Not really. By the time he found someone to look at it, the house was already seized. No judge, no hearing, just a bulldozer ready to roll in. I was silent for a moment. Steven's voice softened. He kept asking me to check on you. Said he hadn't heard from you and was worried. I closed my eyes. He was the one watching my place. I just found out yesterday it was compromised. Steven cursed under his breath. Something's not right. My dad said someone from the HOA had been pressuring him to sign a form. Something about caretaker rights reassignment. That hit hard. I remembered Walter mentioning it once, offhand, months ago. He'd laughed, said it was nonsense. No one takes my keys unless I'm dead, he joked. And now here we were. I'll look into it, I told Steven, and tell him I'm not letting this slide. We hung up. Deke looked at me, already guessing most of it from my face. They came after him, I said. They wanted me vulnerable, so they made him disappear. Someone needs to bleed for this, he muttered. Back at my cabin, Rico had made coffee, strong and bitter, and Shane had printed high-res stills from his drone footage. The wreckage of the party looked even worse from above. Plastic cups scattered like confetti, beer kegs rolled into bushes, someone's high heels impaled on a fence post. But the real treasure was on the footage from before we arrived. Shane had set the drone to loop around the cabin while we drove up. It caught faces, dozens, including several key figures from the county council and one man in particular, Thomas Bellows, the county property officer. He wasn't just drinking there. He was toasting with Patricia and Rory on my deck, laughing like they'd won something. He's the guy who signed off on Walter's tax seizure, Shane said, zooming in. His name's on the paper. Everything was clicking into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated campaign. First Walter, then me. They didn't just want land, they wanted control, and they were used to getting it. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus Taylor, an old friend of my cousin, a real estate lawyer in Helena. I told him I needed someone who specialized in property fraud, HOA abuse, and possibly organized corruption. He told me to meet him the next morning, and to bring everything. We spent the rest of the day collecting deeds, footage, screenshots, copies of HOA letters. Rico printed out every email they ever sent me. Shane gathered GPS logs from the drone. Deke, God bless him, pulled public records on all properties acquired by Rory's development company in the last 5 years. By the time night fell, the evidence filled a cardboard box and a 16-gig flash drive. That night, I sat alone in the dark, watching the woods through my living room window. My rifle sat by the door, just in case. I kept thinking about Walter, lying in a hospital bed hundreds of miles away, probably blaming himself for everything. He'd done nothing wrong. They just picked him because he was old, alone, and in the way. And they thought no one would fight back. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Marcus Taylor looked exactly like the kind of lawyer you wanted in your corner for a street fight disguised as a lawsuit. Mid-40s, lean, no tie, scuffed boots, and eyes like he didn't have time for anyone's crap. We met at his office in Helena, a modest building wedged between an old diner and a bail bonds place. The waiting room smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a nod toward the back. "You brought the box?" he asked, already walking. "I brought the box, the flash drive, and a whole lot of rage," I said, closing the door behind us. He raised an eyebrow. "Good. Because what I've heard so far sounds less like a rogue HOA and more like organized land theft." I dropped the evidence on his desk. He opened the lid and stared at the stack. Photos, letters, printouts, maps. "And they threw a party in your house?" 80 people. Security, catering, DJ, all of it. Marcus gave a low whistle. "That's not just trespassing. That's arrogance." I nodded. "And they hit Walter before that. Fabricated a $34,000 tax debt. No court date. No appeal. They seized his property in under 48 hours. Marcus leaned back, fingers steepled. "Let me guess. The seizure notice was signed off by one Thomas Bellows." "Yeah, he was at the party, caught on drone footage toasting with Patricia and Rory." Marcus's face hardened. "I know Bellows. Been trying to get him disbarred from civil service for years. He's slippery, but he's not smart. If we can prove he's been rubber stamping foreclosures in exchange for kickbacks, we bury him," I finished. He nodded, then picked up the phone. An hour later, a private investigator named Lydia Cho showed up, sharp, focused, and looked like she'd already been digging into Patricia Hargrove's HOA for a while. "I've been tracking abuse reports in rural HOAs for the last 6 months," she said, setting up her laptop. "Silver Pines has come up twice before. Nothing stuck, until now." She pulled up a folder, names, photos, testimonies. 7 properties in the last 4 years, Lydia said. All owners were either elderly, divorced, or long distance. Each one received inflated HOA citations or surprise tax seizures. 3 of those properties now belong to Hargrove Construction. Marcus whistled low. Classic rinse and flip scam. Create artificial debt, force a seizure, buy at auction, resell, or develop. "And the county constable Harvey?" I asked. "He's been covering for them." Lydia nodded. "According to these bank reports, which we got from a whistleblower in the zoning office, Harvey's been receiving monthly consulting stipends from a shell company tied to Rory Hargrove. $2,000 a month," Marcus added. "In exchange for friendly enforcement." I sat back in my chair. I knew they were dirty, but this is something else. Marcus nodded. "We're not just talking about a civil suit anymore. This could qualify as racketeering." "RICO?" I asked. He grinned. "That's the dream." Over the next few days, we went to work like it was a military op. Lydia filed FOIA requests for all recent property seizures in the county. Marcus subpoenaed transfer documents and county meeting minutes. Shane helped extract clean timestamps from the drone footage, while Rico traced the paper trail of HOA fines issued to former owners. But it was Deke who dropped the biggest bomb. "I found something on Hargrove Construction," he said one evening, walking into the cabin with a beat-up laptop. 4 of the properties Rory bought were never publicly listed after the auctions. They were transferred via internal county memo signed by Bellows with community redevelopment as the reason. That means, Marcus said slowly, they bypassed auction protocol entirely. Straight theft, I said, with a paper smile. We gathered statements from 2 of the former property owners, including a woman named Margaret Sloan, who had been evicted 2 years ago after failing to pay a bogus landscaping fee. Her voice trembled as she told us how they came with deputies, changed the locks, and bulldozed her father's barn the same day. I wrote letters, she said, to the sheriff, to the council. No one ever answered. Now we had her affidavit, photos, financial records, copies of the fake citations. Walter, too, gave his statement from his hospital bed via Zoom. I hadn't seen him since before the heart attack. His face was thinner, his voice raspier, but his eyes still full of fire. They thought I'd just roll over, he said. They picked the wrong old bastard. That got a laugh from the room. After the call, Lydia sat with me on the deck of the cabin, going over everything. We're close, she said, but it's still circumstantial. We need one more thing. What? A voice. Someone on the inside. Someone who knows the scheme and can name names. I thought about it. Then I remembered the young HOA secretary, Jenny Parker. I'd met her once at a town meeting. Quiet, nervous. But I'd heard she quit 2 months ago, right after Walter's property got seized. I found her on Facebook. Still lived in the area. Sent a message. She replied in under 10 minutes. I knew this day would come. Can we meet somewhere safe? That was the moment I knew we had them. The walls weren't just cracking. They were ready to collapse. Jenny Parker didn't want to meet at her house. That much was clear. We agreed on a diner 30 miles out near the county line, a dusty little place that served burnt coffee and trucker-sized omelets. She was already there when I walked in, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall, sunglasses, hoodie, nervous as hell. Jenny? I asked. She nodded but didn't speak until I sat down. You recording? She whispered. I pulled out my phone and hit record right there on the table. With your permission. She nodded again. And then she told me everything. I worked under Patricia for 2 years, HOA secretary. I handled letters, fines, correspondence. At first, I thought it was normal, little things, citations for weeds or fences. But then she started pushing me to backdate notices, send out fake second warnings to people who never got a first. Did you refuse? I asked. Not at first. I needed the job. But then she handed me the papers on Walter. Said he owed over 30 grand. I looked at the file. There was nothing. He had no lien, no overdue fees, nothing in the system. It was made up, completely. She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the window. I confronted her. She told me to keep my mouth shut, or I'd be next. Said no one would believe me anyway, that the sheriff was on the payroll and the judge owed Rory favors. And then, I asked. I quit. But 2 days later, my car got towed from my apartment. The landlord said I violated some parking clause. I started getting HOA violations even though I wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. I moved in with my sister, deleted my social media. I thought they'd come after me. You did the right thing leaving, I said. But now we need your help. I'll testify, she said. If you can protect me. I nodded. You'll have protection. I'll make sure of it. After that, things moved fast. I handed the audio to Marcus and Lydia. Between Jenny's testimony, the video evidence, the financial records, and the fraudulent documents, we had enough to go federal. Lydia contacted Agent Morales, Rico's old friend, a man who'd been investigating rural property scams across the Northwest. When he saw our file, he called back in under 10 minutes. This is exactly the kind of operation we've been tracking, Morales said. But you've got more than anyone else has managed. We'll open an active investigation, but we'll need one last piece. Direct criminal intent. Caught in the act. A sting? I asked. More like bait, he replied. We let them feel the heat. You push Patricia, get her or Rory to threaten you directly. Make them talk. If they try to retaliate, we'll be ready. It felt dangerous. Because it was dangerous. But I didn't hesitate. We planned the approach like a recon mission. Shane set up new cameras on my land, more concealed, wired into backup batteries. Deke reinforced the windows and doors, upgraded my locks, and buried motion sensors across the property perimeter. Rico installed trail cams and IR motion alerts linked to his phone. Then I made the call. I dialed Patricia directly. Not her office line, her personal number. She picked up after 2 rings. "Patricia," I said, "we need to talk." "Connor," she replied, saccharine and venomous. "How's your little cabin doing? Still full of party confetti?" "I know what you did to Walter. I know about Bellows and Harvey and the fake citations. I know how you stole those properties. I've got it all in documents, witnesses, footage. You've got 48 hours to make it right. Or I go to the feds." There was a pause, then laughter. "Mr. Reese, you really don't understand how this works, do you? Do you think some papers and old veterans are going to scare me? In 48 hours, you won't have a house." Click. Morales had the call recorded. His team deployed that night. We set the trap. The next 2 nights were quiet. Then on the third, they came. 2 SUVs parked a quarter-mile down the road. 4 men in dark clothes got out, flashlights off, gloves on. They moved fast. I watched it all from the monitor in my bedroom, heart pounding. Deke and Shane were in the woods. Rico was on the roof with a headset. The feds were stationed in vehicles along the road, out of sight. The men circled the cabin, cut the power, and started dousing the shed with gasoline. That's when I stepped out with the spotlight, and Deke emerged from the trees, and Shane dropped down from the rooftop with a suppressed shout. And then came the sirens. "FBI, drop your weapons, hands in the air." 2 of them ran. Deke caught one mid-sprint with a brutal shoulder tackle. Shane tripped another into the gravel. The other 2 froze, staring at the red and blue lights flaring through the trees. The agents swept in, cuffed them, confiscated phones and burner radios. By morning, we had names. One of them was on Rory's construction payroll. Another had done security work for Patricia's HOA for years. The feds moved fast after that. Arrest warrants were issued before lunch. That same afternoon, Morales called me. "We've got them. We're picking up Patricia, Rory, Bellows, Harvey, and their notary, thanks to you." I hung up and stood in my driveway, staring at the mountains. They tried to burn me out, but all they did was light the fuse. The next 48 hours felt like a dam breaking. Patricia Hargrove was arrested at her home during brunch, still in her robe, screaming about entrapment and personal vendettas. Rory went down later that day at his downtown office, tried to run, got tackled by 2 agents in the lobby. Harvey was arrested at the sheriff's station, stunned and red-faced in front of his deputies. Bellows and the crooked notary were picked up the same night. It was over, or at least, the worst part was, the media picked it up fast. Local news ran with headlines like "Veteran Exposes HOA Corruption Ring" and "Federal Raid Takes Down HOA Mafia." National outlets picked it up within a week. I stopped answering my phone after the 5th producer tried to pitch a documentary. Morales asked me to testify at the preliminary hearing. I agreed. The courtroom was packed. I took the stand and laid out the entire story. The fake letters, the party, the threats, Walter's forced eviction, the surveillance footage, the sting. Patricia avoided eye contact the entire time. Rory stared at me like he wanted to chew glass. Jenny testified too. So did Margaret Sloan. So did Walter via a shaky live feed from California. When they read the charges, racketeering, fraud, attempted arson, conspiracy, falsifying public records, the courtroom buzzed like a hornet's nest. They were denied bail. Over the next 3 months, we watched as the case unfolded. More victims came forward. One man had been evicted while he was in the hospital for cancer treatment. Another had his home seized while deployed overseas. It was systematic, ruthless. Eventually, they folded. All of them. Patricia took a 12-year federal plea deal. Rory got 15. Harvey, 8. Bellows and the notary got 5 and 3 years, respectively. Megan, surprisingly, was only hit with community service. Apparently, she knew about the scheme but wasn't directly involved. As for Walter, his property was restored. All fabricated charges voided, compensation paid in full. He moved back in late spring, slower than before, but alive and stubborn as ever. The state dissolved the Silver Pines HOA. Rory's construction firm was stripped of assets. Several families reclaimed their land. We held a barbecue at my place to celebrate. Walter sat next to me, his old hat tilted back, a beer in hand. Deke grilled ribs. Rico brought his new girlfriend. Shane just kept pointing at the new security system he'd installed like it was his baby. We didn't talk about the trial. We didn't have to. They were gone. And we were still here. The mountains were still ours.